corresponding to the 11th of March 2022. Today's class graciously sponsored by Mr. Abraham Albert Dweck for the refuah shelema of Dr. Eliyahu ben Rahel, and as well as in honor of his dear son, Mr. Maurice Dweck, one of the driving forces of the beautiful iTorah.com platform. Additionally, today's class graciously sponsored by Eli Levy in honor of the Hatam Bar Mizvah Divo Ze'ev Atar Kohen, Iratzon, that they may have great beracha nasaha in all their endeavors. Amen.
Amen.
Today, I'd like to concentrate throughout the class of Perashat Zachor. We'll discuss some halachic requirements and we'll discuss some spiritual messages and insights of what this mitzvah of erasing Amalek is all about. So let's start from the halachic perspective. There is a pasuk, or there is a short version, a short perashah at the end of Perashat Kitetze. Perashat Kitetze found in Sefer Devarim. The maftir of that perashah talks about the mitzvah of remembering what Amalek did to us when we left Egypt from a halachic perspective, and I will be saying a lot of information, and I hope that Ezat Hashem in the next few minutes we'll be able to cover as much as ground as possible. Now, the mitzvah is always to be read before Purim. We know that this time of the year we have 4 perashiot. We read one Shekalim. Then we're going to be reading tomorrow Zachor. Next Shabbat, nothing. The third Shabbat, Para. And the fourth Shabbat, Shabbat Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Shabbat Perashat HaChodesh. So we concentrate today on Zachor. Zachor is connected to Amalek. Amalek was the forefather of Haman. That's what the pasuk says. Haman ben Hamedata Agagi. Agag was the king of Amalek, and his great-grandfather was Amalek. Who was Amalek? Amalek was the son of Eliphaz, the grandson of Esav. Amalek, for the historical record, was actually a mamzer. That's a story with Amalek. And that's why there is hatred from Amalek against the Jewish people. There is no mitzvah to get rid of Esav in the Torah, but there is a mitzvah to get rid of Amalek. I will discuss that historical fact in a few minutes. But let's cover the halakha. Because this is the Shabbat connected to Purim, and Purim's survival was by defeating a descendant of Amalek, as also the Haftarah of this Shabbat will be from the book of Shmuel that says, Pakalti et asher asa lecha Amalek. According to most opinions in the halacha, the mitzvah of Perashat Amalek is a mitzvah ta'aseh mideoraita, is a positive commandment of the Torah. Interesting enough, in the actual Perashah of Amalek, there are 3 mitzvot from the Torah. One is Zachor, to remember. The second one is Timche, to erase. And the third mitzvah is Lo Tishkach, don't forget. If you look in the Ben Ish Chai writes that there are people that have a custom that when they buy a pair of shoes or sneakers, they write underneath Haman Amalek. So when they walk, they actually fulfilling the mitzvah of erasing the name of Amalek. Interesting. Look in the Ben Ish Chai, it's written black and white. Obviously, I don't know too many people who do it, but I did know in my younger years some people. But obviously, you need to be careful not to do it on Shabbat, because if you walk, you are erasing mohek. So that's a problem. I'm not asking you to do this, I'm only telling you what is written in the holy books. What about the wonderful ladies? Can the ladies, or do the ladies have an obligation to listen to Zachor or not? So it's a mahloket in the halakha, if yes or not. Why yes and why not? So why not? Is because Amalek was the nation who had the audacity to attack the Jewish people when we left Egypt. Egypt, we need to understand historically that never in the history of the Egyptian nation, until the Jewish people came out of Egypt, any slave that was a slave in Egypt was never able to live outside of the country as a free person. The first time in history that people came out was when the Jewish people came out of Egypt. Now, Amalek had the audacity of attacking the Jewish people. The Pasuk says, Asher karecha baderech. What's the meaning of karecha? So there are many explanations. One explanation means core. What's the meaning of the word core in Hebrew? Cold. It came to turn off the heart of the Jewish people. I'm looking for a note. I heard the shiur before right here of the great Hacham Benayahu Shemueli Shelita from Yerushalayim, very known rabbi. And he says, what is Amalek today? If somebody asks you, do you know who Amalek is? Nobody knows. And who tells you doesn't know. So anybody who tells you that guy is from Amalek, don't believe him. Why not? Two reasons. Reason number one, putting aside the Syrian edict against conversion, but in the Jewish world, if a Gentile wants to become a convert, we don't ask them, are you from Amalek? Are you from Ammon? Are you from Moab? We don't ask those questions. Why not? Because there was a king named Sanherib. Sanherib had a goal which he did achieve partially. What was it? To be one of the 10 kings of the world. And Sanherib was one of the 10 kings of the world. Next to Paro, next to Haman, next to Nebuchadnezzar, next to Ahashverosh. Okay? And there are a few other fellows. Shlomo HaMelech including. Now, what did Sanherib do? Sanherib used to conquer a city, and he used to uproot the citizens of that city and send them as refugees to Moldova, like it's happening today. And then he will take Moldova and he will send them to England. And then he will conquer England and will send them to Spain. And then he will conquer Spain, will send them to Finland. This is the way he ran the world. This way, no nation, you have to understand one thing. And I'm going to say a few things, L'Shem Shamayim, but I think that Borei Olam is opening up our eyes with the situation in the Ukraine, right? How can you live in your home, have business, has income, and a lot of different things, and 1 minute to the other, what happens? You need to escape the country empty-handed. At least when we left Egypt, we left relaxed in the middle of the day, right? With wealth, with escort, with Malachim, with Moshe. But look at this picture today, what's happening in that part of the world. Do you know how challenging it is for an immigrant or for a refugee to start life in a new country that most likely you don't know the language? Many of us fit this criteria in this room, correct? Spasiba. Harasho.
Men cannot leave Ukraine, by the way.
No, right. Men aged 18 to 60 cannot leave the Ukraine. Can you imagine that? You have to send your wife and children by themselves, and you got to stay behind. You have to defend the country. So Borei Olam is opening up the eyes of the world to give us what does it mean to feel as a refugee. And this was Sanherib's strategy. In order to subside and remove any thought of rebellion against the kingdom. Now, so as I said before, the great rabbi gave a Rashi Tevot. How do you know if you are facing Amalek or not? So he gave a strategy. It says, what is the meaning of the word Amalek? Sefer HaToda'ah calls it Am-Lak, the nation that licks. You see the dog? What the dog does? He licks, so to speak, right, Hamavdi? This is what Amalek wanted to do. Amalek wanted to be part of the Jewish people. This is the historical background of Amalek. But what happened? He was a mamzer. I will discuss now how Amalek, the real Amalek, the grandson of Esav, was a mamzer. When he wanted to be part of Am Israel, he was told to Yaakov Avinu, no, you don't qualify. What do you mean they don't qualify? I'm your cousin. Yeah, but your mother was married. That's the background of the hatred of Amalek against the Jewish people. But I ask you the question again. Do you know anyone from Amalek? So let's read Amalek. No. Yeah, he was a student. He was a student. But to say Amalek proper, listen to what the great rabbi said. It says that the word Amalek, if you do some research, Amalek is actually a Rashi Tevot of 4 Sadikim. Amram, Moshe, Levi, Kehat. These were the elite of Am Israel in Misraim. They were the elite. Amram, we learned about him yesterday. Moshe Rabbeinu, Levi, grandfather, and Kehat, the son. But it comes the great Hacham, Benayahu Shmuel Shelita, and it says the word Amalek are 4 strategies of the Yetzer Hara. The Island of Amalek is in Hebrew. This makes sense in Hebrew. In English doesn't make sense. But in Hebrew it makes sense. But the message you will understand. So it says the Island of Amalek is Od Me'ad. The mem, I'll explain each one in a minute. The mem means mahar, tomorrow. The lamed, lo achshav, not now. And the kof, kasheli. Od me'ad, mahar, lo achshav, kasheli. These are 4 answers that when we want to do something to get closer to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Yetzer Hara says od me'ad, soon, or mañana, tomorrow, después, lo achshav, not now. Kasheli is very difficult. This is how the Yetzer Hara wants to turn off the neshama of the person when the person wants to get close to Avodat Hashem. Beautiful. I'm going to give you a second derasha. And it says, this came from one of the Hasidic masters. And it says, Amalek, in the word Amalek, we have the weapon of mass destruction. So far, although the original threat of Amalek was a physical threat, because Yoshua went to wage the war against Amalek, which is the Perashah reading of Purim in the morning. Purim in the morning, we're going to read Amalek 2.0. The war of Yeshua against Amalek. So it says, there are 4 strategies to defeat Amalek, which also Amalek, Gematria Safek. If you take the word Amalek, and you take the word Safek, and you take the word dollar, they are all Amalek. True? 240. Dollar, D-O-L-L-A-R. You know what's in your packet? It's not a capital card, credit card. What's in your wallet, right? Commercial. Okay, dollar. It says dollar Amalek. Why? Because the money can lead the person to divorce from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have seen it. We see it. We see it.
Rabbi, Bitcoin, what the number come out?
Do a number.
I don't know.
I don't know. You can do the number while I do the talking. So the question is, what are 4 strategies against Amalek? Well, relax. Let me do the talking. Enjoy your breakfast, and we'll continue. What are the 4 weapons to destroy Amalek? So the answer is in the word Amalek. Amalek stands for 4 ways which are important for Avodat Hashem. The Ayin of Amalek is for Anava, humility. A Jew must develop humility. You know, sometimes you see people that they dress in a very flashy way. They spend what they don't have. They borrow from Peter to pay Paul. They make themselves in financial disasters. Okay? Which I don't have to go into details. But believe me, I don't do weddings only. Okay? Amalek sometimes comes to the person and blinds the person with the lifestyle of the rich and famous. So it says the Ain of Amalek is Anava. Keep a low profile. You know what it's written in the holy books? That a Yehudi should not be showy. Should not be a show-off. I'm not telling you to dress like a schlepper. But go the Derech HaEmsa'i. The mem of Amalek is the Berit Milah. Shemirat HaBerit. How does a person conduct themselves in holiness? The Lamed of Amalek is the Lashon. How do you talk? How do you speak? There are people that in the synagogue they speak very nice. But in the world of business, they have a sewer in their mouth. Hamavdil, God forbid. That gives the hizuk to Amalek. And the kof of Amalek is Kedusha. Aim for holiness. I ask you a question now. Is a lady exempt of any of the above? No. So now we understand why there are halachic rulings that say that ladies also need to listen to the reading of Amalek. Hacham Obadiah Yosef, Zecher Sadik Livracha, writes that if you have a minyan of 10 ladies that did not hear in the morning the Amalek reading, open the Sefer Torah for them in the afternoon to read the parasha of Amalek. Wow. Yes, halacha lema'aseh, and we do it here. And many synagogues in the world do it. Check out the schedule. We added one more reading for Mincha. Not for the men, for the ladies. And the ladies who come to the next minyan tomorrow to listen to the Amalek before the husband comes home to pray in the later minyan. In the event that a person finds themselves in a situation that for health reasons or medical reason, or God forbid somebody is with COVID. I heard not long ago that there was a wedding a few days ago and 25 people got COVID. So guess what? Here in Miami, not far. Yeah, okay? I don't know how, but that's what I was told earlier today. So one of the questions that I received earlier was, how do they do with Zachor? Short answer, stay home, open the Humash, Perashat Devarim, Mehila, Sefer Devarim, the fifth Humash, Perashat Kitetze, I believe it's chapter 25. I'm 90% sure. But it's the final paragraph of Perashat Kitetze that begins, Zachor, remember, Lo Tishkach, don't forget. The redundancy of the Torah is simply to let us know that the Yetzer Hara will not rest until Mashiach comes. If that's the case, everybody makes the effort of listening to Amalek, the reading, and this gives us the Hizuk against the war against the Yetzer Hara. That's why the Halacha writes, because this is a mitzvah ta'aseh mide oraita, a biblical commandment, you take out the best Sefer Torah that you have in the Hechal. Take the best that you have. Number one. Number two, a child cannot go up to their aliyah. Even a bar mitzvah boy cannot go up to the aliyah of Zachor. Usually, a good question, because even a child becomes 13 years old, there are certain halachic and physical matters that were not yet developed, and therefore he's not called a gadol. He's still considered a katan, and also being mitzvah ta'aseh deoraita, usually the rabbi gets Perashat Zachor, because, interesting enough, Perashat Zachor, the kahal needs to have in mind to fulfill the mitzvah through the rabbi, and the rabbi or whoever is going to go up needs to have kavanah that is fulfilling the mitzvah on behalf of the kahal. To the point that the Ben Ish Chai wrote a Leshem Yehud that we're going to say it tomorrow before reading Perashat Zachor. Additionally, the Halacha says that many times, and as somebody who reads the Sefer, I can relate to it, when the Baal Koreh finishes reading the Aliyah, many times people say the last word of the Aliyah, right? Now, according to the Halacha, in Perashat Zachor, this cannot be done. Why? Because you must listen the mitzvah of Zachor mideoraita from the Sefer Torah. So in the event that tomorrow some Hachamim will say, Lo Tishkach, like a choir, so the Baal Koreh needs to repeat the last part of the Perashah to make sure that the Kahal listen to every single word, etc. So going back, for those that are homebound, or let's say COVID affected, or far away from the synagogue, or giving birth or gave birth, or for XYZ reason cannot come, open the Humash and read it from the Humash. If the husband can read for the wife with ta'amim, that's the proper way to do it. But if not, just read it from the Humash. Obviously, I leave that decision to people. We don't want to give the people the comfort zone when it's not necessary. Somebody asked me, Rabbi, are you going to do Megillah for Zoom? No. Come to the synagogue. Shuhada. Last year, Zoom, Megillah, we understood. Zoom, Megillah, COVID is on the retirement mode. So don't play the game of the Yetzer Hara. And that's part of Amalek's strategy. What the Amalek said? Mahar, tomorrow. Lo achshav, not now. Kashe li, it's difficult. Od me'at, a bit later. Rashi Tevot, Amalek. That's why in the books of Musar, they talk about two midot, two character traits, one to get close to and one to run away from. To get close to is midat hazerizut. agility. And atzlut is the opposite, laziness. What's the first letter of the word Amalek? Atzlut. Ain for atzlut. And laziness or agility does not discriminate on the gender of the person. You can be a male or you can be a female, because we have a female audience as well. Okay? Whatever the person is and whatever the person was created by a Kadosh Baruch Hu. This is about to sound like a political statement, okay? The 7 colors of the rainbow. You know, there are people that are starting to wear these symbols. You need to know that halachically is forbidden. Halachically, you're not allowed to wear these colors that now it became a movement. LGBT, you know what that means? Ask your fellow friend. Okay? If I know it, most people know it. And there is a color code for this movement. It's a halachic problem. Like the halacha writes, on the day of Purim, he's not allowed to be dressed as a woman. A man cannot dress as a woman, and a lady cannot dress as a man. Even for children, says Rabbi Yosef. Why? Because the neshama of the child is pure and holy. Like feeding a non-kosher food to a child. Sometimes people say, Khalio, walad, yani, is a child. Or turn on the light, he's a child. So Rabbi Yosef writes and it says, what does that mean? Because he's a child, he doesn't have a neshama? Probably his neshama is more pure than our neshama. The younger the child, the holier the neshama. That's why the Gemara writes, Mashiach comes. Now we need volunteers to build the Bet HaMikdash. You know what the Gemara says? En mebatlim Talmud Torah shel tinokot shel Bet Rabban afilu lebinyan Bet HaMikdash. When the children are learning in the Kitab, in the Talmud Torah, let them learn. Even for the building of the Bet HaMikdash, you're not allowed to tell them, okay, boys, okay, girls, come, we're going to build the Bet HaMikdash. And the Gemara says, continue learning. Why? David HaMelech writes in the book of Tehillim, Mipi olelim beyonekim misad ta'oz le'ashbit oyev u'mitnakem. From the mouth of the young children, even the babies that are nursing, you establish the strength of the people to defeat the enemies of the Bnei Israel. Even when it came to Haman, great-great-grandson of Amalek. When did Haman smell that his defeat was imminent? When he put in his mind, I'm going to start executing the Jewish people. Who will be the first Jew to be executed? Mordechai. Because Mordechai, right, refused to bow down to him. So he embarrassed him, so to speak. That's what Haman felt. But Mordechai did not bow down because Haman had garments of Avodah Zarah, of idolatry. The next in line, the students of Mordechai. Do you know how many students Mordechai had in the Talmud Torah on that generation? 22,000. Wow. 22,000. And these students were fasting together with Mordechai. The mothers of these children came to the kollel to bring them food. And the children refused to touch the food. It says, we are learning Torah, we are living with Torah, and God forbid we're going to die learning Torah. So there is a concept that sometimes you ask a child a question, and a child will answer you with a pasuk. Haman did exactly this. He went to one child from the Kitab and tells him, what did you learn today in the Kitab? So one child says, Al tira mipahat pitom, ומשוע רשעים כי תבוא. Translation. Al tira, don't be afraid from the unexpected fear. Umishoat reshaim, and the Holocaust threatened by the wicked that may happen to you. Don't be afraid. Yani is like a dog that barks. As long as the dog barks, he's not biting. Can you understand that? Right? Chazak. Now, Haman wasn't happy with this pasuk because this pasuk indirectly is talking to him. You want to get rid of the Jewish people? We're not afraid of you. He says, forget about it. Let me go to the next student. Pesuk li pesukecha. What did you learn today? So the next student says, Otsu etza betufar. Davru davar velo yakum ki imanu el. Otsu etza. The enemies of the Jewish people will plan against the Jews. Vetufar, it will be denied. Davru davar, they will threaten verbally. Velo yakum, and will never materialize. Why not? Ki imanu el, because Hashem is with us. So when Haman heard from the children that innocently, now they could have said, we learned today Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. They could have said, Yom HaShishi v'chulu hashamayim. This was the emunah lesson that Mordechai Sadiq taught in the Kitab that day. It says we may be threatened, that we could be a letter, could be an edict against us, could be a Holocaust pre-established against us. Don't worry. Ki imanu el. As long as our connection with God is strong, we are in the right track. And we all know the happy ending of the story. Okay, I don't know how much I covered, but I'm going to close this book. I'm going to open up the next one. I have two more. Okay. But I'll be respectful of the time, being Erev Shabbat Kodesh, and there's a lot of things to do. So remember, we mentioned about Amalek's hatred towards the Jewish people, correct? So let's discuss historically what happened with Amalek. Who Amalek was. No Amalek, the idea, no Amalek, the animosity towards the Jewish people as a whole, but let's talk about Amalek, the human being. Who was he? When was he born? Who were his parents, grandparents, cousins, and relatives? We know some of these answers. We already know his grandfather was Esav, his father was Eliphaz, his uncle was the cousins were the Shevatim, and Yaakov Avinu was the brother of his grandfather. How will you say that in English? Great uncle. Okay, well, so he has certain lineage, Amalek. Okay, let's see. Amalek was the son of Eliphaz, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esav. The mother was Timnah, right, from Seir, and she was a concubine to Eliphaz, and from that relationship, Amalek was born. But Timnah was a mamzerta, mamzeret. Timnah herself, prior to her concubine life with Eliphaz, she was a mamzeret to begin with. How do we get there? She was the sister of Lotan, that he was the son of Seir. So basically, Eliphaz went with a married wife, which was the wife of Seir. From that relationship, Timnah was born, and basically, Timnah wanted to be part of the Jewish people. And she came to Yaakov. Yaakov, make me a Jew. I'm your cousin. indirectly. If she's related to Esav, and Yaakov and Esav are brothers, and it says, Uba'ali Yaakov, she came to Yaakov to become a convert. Belo ratza lekabela. Yaakov says, we respect you, we know who you are, you're a wonderful person, but we have an issue. You are born out of wedlock. That means there is a pasuk in the Torah that says, Lo yabo mamzer b'kahal Hashem. A mamzer or mamzeret cannot go through the process of conversion and become a Jew and say, we forget your past. Sure, if a person is an Arab or a Christian in our generation, putting on the side the edict of the Syrian tradition, and you have to know what's happening in the Jewish world from yesterday. The opening up in Israel a special Beit Din to filter the thousands of Ukrainian refugees that came to Israel, because they already remember that in the previous mass migration of individuals from Russia, right? The majority were not Yehudim. You have to understand this. It's painful to say this. A big percentage were not Jewish. So how come they came? Very simple. Because the state of Israel, law of return, doesn't care if the mother is Jewish. Even if the father is Jewish and the mother is a Goya, they welcome them back to Israel and get all the benefits. Sure, that's very painful. I'm in pain saying this. And they learned the lesson back then that they brought a lot of Goyim innocently, but not innocently whatsoever. They knew it, but they wanted to shift the religious power in the state of Israel. That's why, and respectfully to the many people who may be from Russia, I'm not referring to the good Jewish people, but the Gentiles that came, they brought with themselves a lot of spiritual challenges. If it's pig, food, non-Shabbat observance, a lot of immorality involved as well. I don't want to go too much into the details, but that created a calamity in the Jewish people. And you have no idea how many cases of Ba'alei Teshuvah in Israel, right? In Israel, of Russian immigrants that they did Teshuvah, they went to a Shabbaton, they were Mekarev, and suddenly they're gonna get married. They start doing a minimum halachic research, and they say, Goy, Goya. So the chief rabbinate yesterday established an expert Beit Din to start dealing with all these cases. Not today, yesterday. They started from yesterday. And this is not simple. Because you have to understand, as I said in the beginning of the class, you did not schedule your departure to Israel. You ran away because the Russians invaded Ukraine. Literally, they were evicted from the home. And many people, they barely left with their own life. Forget about documents, forget about copy of Ketubot. Sure, maybe some people did come with them, some people had access to them, but many didn't have anything. And they pashut, you gotta do the research now. Where are you from? Your parents, tell me. Because you have to understand, Israel, without any hesitation, is one of the most generous countries of the world when it comes to migrating to Israel, right? As immigrants, law of returns, etc. And that creates an incentive to say, I'm a Jew, Like we learned the other day, somebody stopped in the highway, he sees somebody with a kippah. And he stopped on the shoulder of 95, but then as he gets close to the fellow, he sees that he has a cross hanging from his neck. So it says, are you Jewish or Christian? It says, no, I'm a Christian, he says, the fellow. But my father told me that if I ever have problems, put a kippah, because the Jewish people will stop for you and will help you. And it's true. It is true. The Jewish people, and I'm happy to say this, obviously from a personal level, are the ones that are providing the most amount of funding for the Ukrainian crisis. Forget about governments now. We can't compete with governments, 50 MiGs, 200 missiles, 50 billion, whatever. These are numbers that are beyond our understanding. But I'm saying from humanity perspective, the Jewish nation is number one on the list of financial help. Yesterday, Agudat Israel reached the $10 million goal to send to the Ukraine. The Sephardic Heritage Museum, I don't know how many millions already, how many people contributed last Shabbat, right? No, it's already close to 5 to 6, I heard, yesterday, even more. But obviously, we don't want to talk too much about it for Ain Hara, etc. Chabad movement in the Hasidic world, from all over the world, everybody is giving, participating, each person to their abilities. Renewal from the kidneys, right? So I'll tell you how the numbers go. From the outside world donations, every 15 million people, 283 donors from the American Goyish world. Okay, that's the amount of kidney transplants that they did. Renewal, in a few years only, already did 830, actually more, 836. And yesterday, 3 cases, new cases came up. 3 plus 2, between the Wednesday night event, Tuesday night, and last night, 6 new cases. So let's be conservative. 836. You do the numbers. Divide 15 million into 283. Do that. 283 divided 15 million.
$53,000.
How much?
53,000.
Okay, so do that number, 53,000 times 836. 44 million. So the amount of donations by renewal of kidney transplant equals to 44 million citizens of the United States. And how many are we in the world? And how many in America? No, in America, 6, 7 million, 7 million. So that will be 0, 0, 2. Yani 0.002 of the American population is Jewish. And how much did we give in the renewal movement? The value of 44 million citizens. But this is the essence of a Yehudi. Rahmanim, Baishanim, Gomle Hasadim. So let's go back to Yaakov. So it says, Yaakov says, regretfully, I cannot welcome you. You're a wonderful lady. So what did she do? She says, I'm not going to take no as an answer. I want to be connected to the Jewish people. What did she do? She became a concubine to Eliphaz. Concubine slash Khadame, Ijire. What did she says? Amra, mutav, I'd rather be a maid in a Jewish household than being a queen in a different nation. And from that illicit relationship, Amalek was born. It goes further. Eliphaz, the father of Amalek, was raised in the house of Ishaq Avinu. He had the milah at the day of 8 days old. Because all the time that Ishaq was alive, Esav did milah to his children. And therefore, there was an aura of godliness during a certain stage of the life of Eliphaz. But Amalek was born after Ishaq passed away. So who raised Amalek? Esav. Without the Berit Milah, and that hatred that Esav displayed towards Yaakov, it was the training that Amalek received. Now, Hamavdil, okay? What is one of the biggest fears today in the world? Atomic bomb, right? Also, cyber attacks, right? Or white supremacist groups online. Now, imagine yourself, a fellow, being raised in an environment of hatred. This is what happened with Amalek. He was raised by Esav. What the Gemara says, Halacha hi Esav soneh et Yaakov. Esav hates Yaakov. So when a child is born into an environment of hatred, what do you expect him to have? Love? Hatred. And he goes further. So it says, Esav used to complain to Amalek. Grandfather used to complain to the grandson. What was the complaint? It says, how many times I attempted to get rid of Yaakov, and every time I failed. Maybe you can finish the mission for me. It goes further, and it says, ask Amalek, grandfather, you are Esav. You were not able to defeat Yaakov. How do you expect me to defeat Yaakov? What does Esav says? Don't worry. I'm going to give you a sign. When you see that sign being activated, attack the Jewish people. What was the sign that Esav gave Amalek? Bais'u mirefidim. Refidim was called Refidim. Sherafu yedehem min haTorah. Ketino kaboreach mibet haSefer. It says that this place was called Refidim. Refidim comes from the word in Hebrew, Rafu. The hands became weak from the Torah. When Moshe Rabbeinu was giving him the Torah, they asked Moshe, Moshe, at what time you finish? You have more mitzvot to tell us? When Moshe stopped, they ran away. They say, no more. If you're going to keep talking, he's like, I'm going to close the book now. And I say, wait, this was the introduction. I'm going to open up I have 3 more books. But I have Rahamim on you and on me. So this is the last one today. The next one we'll save it for Purim. It's a lot of beautiful things coming, Be'ezat Hashem. So it says, when he saw the Jewish people leaving Egypt, Bnei Israel yaseu beyat ramah. Amalek thought, Amalek is watching the movie. What's happening in Egypt? He heard of the slavery. I'm so happy, I'm so happy, I'm so happy that the Jewish people are suffering. I'm happy when Pharaoh makes the decree. But suddenly, he hears, hold on, it's a new sheriff in town. Moshe Rabbeinu. Dam, Sephardea, the Makot. Then he hears that the Jewish people, as the Pasuk says, Ubnei Israel Yoseim Beyad Ramah. The Jewish people are coming out with wealth. With wealth. No schleppers. No empty-handed. With wealth. So that hatred increased. Then he hears of the splitting of the Red Sea. Defeat of the Egyptians. Survival of the Jewish people. Every miracle ignited more and more and more hatred against Bnei Israel. And that's when the Pasuk writes, Vayavo Amalek. Amalek came to seek the destruction of the Jewish people. And that's why the Pasuk says, Vayilachem im Israel. He waged the war against the Jewish people, and that's why every year the Torah gives us a commandment to remember what Amalek represents. And as I said in the beginning of the class, it's not about who the nation is. Today we don't know who Amalek is, but Amalek can be labeled anti-Semitism that seeks our destructions. The students of Amalek, Haman, Hitler, the Cossacks, the pogroms, the Ahashverosh, and Crusades, and the Inquisition, every chapter of history had a student of Amalek. But Be'ezat Hashem, we hope and pray that in the Zechut of now perhaps having a deeper understanding, and again, there are at least 4 more pages to discuss about Amalek. But it's already Friday, Erev Shabbat Kodesh, is already, I'm going into overtime almost. So, but I think that everybody gets the message. Avoid saying later, avoid saying tomorrow, avoid saying not now, avoid saying it's too difficult. Only when it comes to Avodat Hashem. If the Yetzer Hara comes to bother you, or me, he says, why don't you do an Avon today? In that case, you tell them tomorrow. In that case, saying tomorrow is good. But when it comes to do something good, and believe me, I see this more often than you think. That you want to do something, and then suddenly an inner voice tells you, it's too early, do it later. That's a shtick. And remember the 4 words that Amalek represents. Anava, humility, not to activate the eye of the goyim against us, the way it's written in the holy books. The Berit Milah, and where is the connection of the Berit Milah with Amalek? Short answer. The Pasuk writes in the Perashah, Asher karecha baderech. Karecha is tum'at keri. Karecha be'ish asher lo yeh tahor mikere laila. So it says, when God forbid a person is not meticulous in Tarat HaMishpacha, in the Berit Milah, or the Lashon, how they talk, all that activates Amalek, activates the Yetzer Hara. But Kedusha, holiness, keeps the Yetzer Hara far away from the person. I wish everybody to have a beautiful Shabbat, wherever you may be. And Be'ezat Hashem, we'll see each other on Sunday unless Mashiach comes, right? On Mosei Shabbat, that is definitely the first hour.